So this is our first Women in Business event for 2025. We've been doing this since 2017. I know, I feel very proud. And when we started it, it was like, this is not going to be a one-off. This is going to be a sustained thing. So here we are, 2025, and we're still going. We went through all COVID. And of course, in that time, we've had some amazing speakers. And what I have to say is when you ask women, will you come and speak? They actually always say yes, which is just so touching that they give up their time. Amazing women. So we've had the now Lady Chief Justice of England and Wales, Sue Carr. She came during COVID. She gave us her top 10 tips, which I have to say were very good. I'm going to ask Polly those later. Get thinking, Polly. We've also had Cressida Dick when she was the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Amber Rudd when she was Home Secretary. We had Kath Kidson. We had Deborah Mearden. We've had a lot of amazing women. And tonight we are joined by Polly McMaster, who is the CEO and founder of Fold. And Fold is a boutique concept wardrobe, which you probably, I can see already around the room. There are a lot of Fold fans already. You already know Fold very well. And why I love Fold is, hello Lucy, is that it literally is fit for purpose. So you can go from desk to dinner with no time wasted whatsoever. I went to the theatre last night, went straight out at 5 to 7, got to the theatre at 7:25 to see Much Ado About Nothing in my Fold. So let me introduce Polly, and I got home very late last night as a result of going to the theatre. Hello, welcome, Polly. And happily in my postbox was the Fold brochure. And it always is one of the joyful things, because I don't get very much post nowadays, that I always look at as I'm taking the lift up to my flat. And what I thought was lovely about the brochure, of course, it's sort of tangible and it's not screen and it's great. But the first thing it said was make it count. And then it said, we asked, you answered. So when we launched our workwear survey last year, the response from our global community was resounding, workwear matters. And then I read this sentence, and it really did make me love Fold even more, and really think, gosh, I'm so lucky to be speaking to Polly this evening, is we know you don't have long to get ready in the morning. I thought, yes, she knows me well. So 88% of you said that the right workwear boosts your confidence and creates a work mode mindset. And of course, even authors, I was listening the other day to Nick Cave on Desert Island Disc, and he said, to write music, to write books, I get dressed in a suit and I go as if it's, workwear matters, even to sort of people like pop stars. So the Fold, many of us already know about it, and we already love it. So let me introduce Polly McMaster. Thank you so much for coming this evening to talk to us, Polly, about in 2017, you were working 70-hour weeks in finance. You had no time to think about your wardrobe. And of course, probably in 2017, there weren't very many options other than sort of the black, the grey, and things of that sort. And I suppose looking around the room, we're still a lot in black and grey, but actually colour is coming into it. And I think, as I was talking to Polly just before we came down, a quiet influencer in that if there is colour, then actually there is colour that we can start wearing. So take us there, Polly. 2017, you start the Fold. What was your light bulb moment to decide that you were going to leave finance and to start your own company, which has obviously been so successful already?
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's really lovely to be able to share the story, and especially see so many lovely outfits that I know, like every item we've ever done, right? So I'm like, I know that one, and it's really lovely. It really brings it to life. And actually, it's so nice to have started something where, to your point about fit for purpose, the vision was to create this wardrobe for incredible working women. And then when you see incredible working women wearing it, you're like, yes, we did it. That's great. We're still doing it. So really, the light bulb moment was actually my first day really in a more corporate environment. So I'd actually been working in a lab because I did a PhD, which is many moons ago, but a very different kind of career, very different working wardrobe because I was literally in a lab coat. And so when I got offered a job in consulting, I was super excited. I was like, oh, you know, I loved fashion. And was studying science, but I had really loved fashion and almost wanted to go and do art school and things like that, and ended up not doing it. So this was the moment. This was like, right, I get to go and, you know, sashay down the corridors of power and buy a really cool power suit and feel amazing. Then went shopping and was like, oh, there's not that much. And that was very odd to me. And it was odd on a lot of different levels. It was disappointing on one level because I was like, oh, actually, you know, I'm going to have to settle for something much more frumpy and masculine and grey or black or whatever, and no personality to go to this job that I'd been so excited about. And also because it was a bit of a signal to me that it was difficult to find. So I'd had the fortune, I suppose, of believing growing up that as a girl and as a woman, I could kind of do any job. I'd never actually experienced a moment where there was an obvious male-dominated arena before, and then I experienced it plenty. But at that point, it was a bit shocking. So even before I'd stepped foot into the office, the signal was, actually, we're not even providing the clothes for you to do this. The market isn't providing the clothes for you to do this. And then you're thinking, well, then there can't be that many of us. And lo and behold, on the first day, all 4 girls out of 24 in our peer group, I'm sure you've had similar ratios in various jobs, were wearing the same suit because there was pretty much only one place to get them. So it really stuck with me. I mean, it seems ridiculous that that was the first day and that was the moment, but it really did stick with me. So then I worked in consulting for a while, then in private equity, then I went to business school. And while I was at business school, I suppose all of these things came together. I mean, I probably should have gone back to private equity if I now with a more, let's say if you took a more financial view of your career. But my passion was not to go back. And what I really thought was this was a moment. So there were lots of different things happening. One was that I think the conversation about women in business was starting. So it was actually a little bit longer ago. It was 2010, 2011. So this kind of women's networking event absolutely didn't exist then. And it was just beginning where women were starting to seek each other out as their lone poppies in their organizations. So that was sort of one theme. Then I had the history of really loving fashion and this sort of real frustration that why wasn't there a brand that was just resonating better, that had an emotional connection with me, and that if you went into a store, they'd say, oh yes, I understand you've got a job interview, not like, you know, a little dress that's going to make you look ridiculous in a corporate setting. And it didn't make any sense to me that there wasn't, because when I then spoke to people and looked around, I felt like there were a lot of people who could be a potential customer for this. So there was this sort of fashion and this idea element to it. And I suppose I was also interested in business. So having worked in private equity and consulting, I loved the idea of running a business and not being on that side of the fence, but actually doing the doing. So I thought, well, let's give it a go and see whether or not there is room for a brand that could be that brand that actually meant something and could shine a light on women who are doing amazing things. That at that time also, really the women that you saw were celebrities, and they weren't necessarily being celebrated for being senior in their field, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, let me just interrupt. There's some seats here at the front if you want to come forward rather than squish at the back, just to let you know. I was trying to signal to you earlier. So the light bulb moment, you decide that there's a need, you can see that there's a need, and it's a very personal need. And you've had the experience of needing things to be fit for purpose. So, but what was how do you then, it is a courageous step, isn't it? That you, as we were discussing, you let go of one trajectory. And of course, it's that sort of Robert Frost poem, isn't it? The left, do you go left or do you go right? Either of them would have been completely different, but you decided, I'm going to let go of that for the time being. I can always come back to it.
Yeah.
But actually you're going to start going down. Do you do this with how do you start getting a team? I always think, isn't it, a team is the key thing. So how do you start from the first steps that you do?
I think coming from that professional services background, it's interesting because I think when you read about a lot of entrepreneurs, they're quite maverick and you see them as being big risk takers. But coming from the background I did, where everything was quite analytical and well thought through and a strategy presented and, you know, a lot of research. So that was more my way of approaching things. I'm sure that would resonate with a lot of you, given the fields that you work in. So for me, it was business school, and it was basically using any and every resource that was available through that. So literally writing a business plan, doing lots of market research with all of the like-minded women that I had at hand at business school, which was very helpful. Using all of the, you know, the strategy class, the marketing class, the pricing class, the corporate finance class, anything that was even remotely relevant. And so really just putting, I suppose, trying maybe to take this feels like a very left field strange thing to do and put it in the hat of this is territory I'm familiar with because I know how to put all these different blocks together and think about it in a way that I'm comfortable with and felt more authentic to me. And I guess even though I was very excited about the idea of running a business and doing this sort of creative thing, I think if it hadn't stacked up, I would have walked away. I think it's interesting, certainly at business school, there's a lot of, I'd really love to run my own business one day. And actually, I now look back and think, I'd think twice about that. But you sort of, that's not enough of a reason. I think if you've come from something where you're prepared to look at all of the different routes, you sort of have to do your homework. So did that. And then what on earth do you do? I mean, you've always worked in professional services, sort of ivory tower. Doing the doing is a totally and utterly different thing. And I would say that the first few years of it were really, it was graft. It was not glamorous. It was absolute roll the sleeves up, just get stuck in on absolutely everything, from even sort of how do you register a company and get a company number and a bank account, and how do you take a sale? And in those days, there weren't all these shiny kind of really easy plug and play web solutions and things like that. Oh no, it was like much more kind of like, plonky and terrible. We didn't know how to find a photographer to take decent pictures of the clothes. Where do you get stuff made? I mean, it was step by step, sort of stitch by stitch, literally. And starting off very much, if we make a few things, so I sort of had in mind, okay, this is the kind of thing that, might resonate. Make a few samples and then see if you can sell them. And actually, even that was really humbling, like selling, which obviously, as you become more senior and you start selling to clients, but selling a garment, making somebody, asking them to part with their money, it's challenging, especially when you have no validation. It's not like the brand is shiny and big and it all looks fantastic. It's people taking a bit of a chance. So that graft stage was a real learning. And really, you do every job, you do every bit of it, and it really tests your passion for, do you really want to do this? And I think that's good because it's a good natural selection process.
Yeah. No, I suppose, isn't it, you do everything, including watering the plants, and it just means, isn't it, you have to be prioritized, be really resilient. And I suppose, as you say, when you have someone who's choosing your product, your service, isn't it? It's the best feeling, isn't it? I suppose, isn't it? Seeing that so many people are wearing folds, isn't it? It's like, gosh, you take yourself back to 2010 and think,
yeah, would it
well
ever
done, Polly.
Would it ever really happen? Yeah. And I think it takes a long time to go from what you see in your head. I mean, I'm quite a visionary person, so I guess what I'd envisioned that the fold would be, I'd say it's kind of much more recent history that it's got to how I envisioned it, because at the beginning you can't necessarily afford all of the things that would bring it to life in that way. So you have to accept the imperfect to go on the journey, and be all right with that to an extent. You have to be all right with mucking in and making it work however you can.
Yeah.
And then bit by bit you see the gradual improvement, and you do then, for example, with the team, because you've got more validation, you're able to hire people who are taking slightly less of a chance, because there's much more to go on, and taking that risk to be employed by you. So each of those things becomes incrementally easier as you go along.
Yeah. And that's interesting, that, isn't it? I remember reading a book a couple of months ago about how you make decisions and what you were saying, that is sort of a Harvard professor that's written this book, and she, in fact, Myra, has read it, wherever you are in the audience. And what is it, Myra? It's the mindset body, mindful body, isn't it? Mindful body. So she says how people make decisions is you do that sort of the balance sheets of pros and cons, but you then get into paralysis of analysis, because there's always a pro, there's always a con, and every con actually is probably a pro, and every, so whichever way you look at it. But she said the thing to do is actually to make a decision, and then your journey, isn't it? You then spend the time making the decision right. So you do small little pivots, small, as you adjust as things go by. So when you're prioritizing, so it started 2017. You launched the Fold in 2017.
Even 2012, actually.
2012,
yeah. So 12 years, nearly 13 years ago.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So did you launch immediately on the website? So was that how you thought that's how we'll do? And so presumably with a web designer, you're literally creating it, are you?
Pretty much, yeah. It was very much that sort of very basic sites. But then, to be fair, I suppose online shopping was also more basic, so it wouldn't have stacked up quite so badly against what's available today. It was quite basic, and we also did, though, a lot of very sort of pound the pavement selling. So I would sort of try and convince someone, could we come to your office? And we've got one little rail for you to look at now, but we would bring everything. It would be like, I'm going to bring the shop, basically, because we didn't have one. So I'd bring all the samples. We'd, literally load them in the back of my car. Me and another girl who still works at the Fold. So she's our oldest, or not oldest, like longest standing employee. And we would, try and convince people to sort of shop, but you'd be trekking them off to the loo, to change in the loo, to try something on. It was just like, oh, this is not the romantic experience that, people really envision. And, occasionally we'd make some sales, but a lot of time we wouldn't. So then haul it all back into the car, all into the back room of my house. And then I'd, pretty much just lie on the kitchen floor and cry, because it was just so tiring, and often you didn't really sell anything. And then you were like, why am I doing this? This is ridiculous. I had a really good job. This was a bad decision. And then the following morning, you'd be like, no, I believe, I know this should exist. I really, really know that this should exist. So I'm just going to have to keep going and, be really really persevere. And I think, resilience is a word that's really sort of bandied around and overused, but actually I think there's nothing more true than on this journey, because it's not just also that graft stage of what you're doing with your customers and it's sheer bloody hard work, but it's also the rejection level. So we had to raise money quite early because you need stock. So once we'd done the thing of moving away from these samples, I did actually need to invest in some stock. And, retail is a very cash hungry business. So it's like, right, we need some investors, angel investors. And the way that the numbers work, you might pitch to 100 people, you might end up with 2. So what you've actually had is 98 rejections. And that is very crushing. So, 98 people, I just don't think, I don't think your idea is that good, or I don't think you're that good, or you can absorb it whichever way you want. But again, after all of that, are you really going to still keep going? That takes a lot of inner stubbornness, you could call it. Yes, I will keep going. Vision. To persevere. Yeah. And the same with customers. If you think that, a lot of people would try something and then they just wouldn't quite fit, and you were trying to convince them and they didn't want it. And so, you have to go through a lot of that before you then see that it tip in the other way. And then when you do get that, I suppose it really makes the progress that much more exciting, because you've got the history of where it came from. So now when we see women we really admire, all the women that we really admire wearing the brand, it really matters. We were saying earlier, when I genuinely, anyone on the team, if we see anyone in the wild, as it were, wearing the Fold, we get so excited, and we take a little picture, on the tube. Look, she's wearing Fold shoes, take a little picture, and then we put it on our Slack, like, I saw some shoes today on somebody. And, obviously there's a lot of people, we're quite a decent sized business now. So you'd think you would see it a lot, but it really matters. And because you work so hard to get there, it matters all the more.
Yeah, and it's almost, isn't it, like machine learning? Because you see how people interpret, maybe someone puts like some different thing, or they make an alteration, isn't it? And you think, oh, that's actually, you've let your design just now live, as you say, in the wild, like an artist.
Yeah.
But also, isn't it, it's actually, that's good feedback, isn't it? And as a matter of practice, that actually I can see that's what people want. And given that your whole concept, isn't it, was to design for working women, so that it was fit for purpose. That's actually quite great to have the practical feedback.
Absolutely. And I think also the sense of community. I think one of the things that really mattered to me was this idea that when, as I was saying earlier, when you were quite a lone poppy was your expression in an organization, and you need that women's network and you need that support, and the feeling that there was something that spoke the same language, or there could be like-minded women. And we often hear really lovely stories of people might go to a conference or they'll go to an event, and because it's quite a recognizable signature in our style, if people, you know, once they become a customer for a bit, they spot it around, and then it's an icebreaker. It's not the point of why you're there, but if it's just that one little thing that gets you into conversation with someone, oh, you know, I can see your dresses from the fold, and then you start a conversation. You know, why not have it be that? It could be anything. But if it helps somebody build their confidence to break the ice at a networking event, it's done its job, actually. That's incredible. And all of those little things around thinking that there are women, you know, going out and doing, hopefully just with a little bit more confidence, doing their big things that they're doing that day, that's a huge part of how we think about our designs and how we want women to feel. And that's why we do the surveys, to try and understand whether we're, you know, hitting the nail on the head or not. And does it matter? And actually, it is really nice to hear that it does matter.
Yeah, no, it does, absolutely. As I say, your brochure caught it exquisitely. You don't have time in the morning to get ready, so it's very much helpful. Yeah. And it must be, so how does it work then? So we were talking earlier, 2017 election night, do you turn the TV on and see that Laura Koonsberg of the BBC is wearing a fold, or does she contact you before and say, I'm going to wear it? Presumably it was a lovely surprise, was it, when you were looking at election night?
It's a real mix. Some things we know about when there's someone high profile wearing something, and some things we absolutely don't know about. Some things are an absolutely brilliant surprise. Some things are less of a good surprise. Depends who's wearing it really and what they've been doing. And there have been some people with some very iconic moments wearing the fold, which, you know, other customers have been a bit upset about, but we can't control it. It is in the wild, and also they are genuine customers. So that's their right to, you know, to buy from the brand. There's nothing we can do about that. But some, you know, there are some really, really lovely moments when you see someone in the public eye and they've chosen to wear the brand for something that, you know, is a really big moment for them. And I think we forget sometimes, actually, because maybe we take for granted that if somebody's in the public eye that it's not a big deal to them. But actually, all of those steps of preparation, it really does matter. And then if they've been commented on, for example, in a negative way, it's really hard not to take that personally. So I think it, you know, can matter even more. So it's sometimes we do know, and then we can get, you know, excited about it, and
I see that they put an extra bow on or something to
exactly.
So in terms of goals ahead, you opened the Chelsea shop. Did you open the Chelsea shop? Was that sort of, you went from being all sort of virtual? Did you open the Chelsea shop before COVID?
So we had our very first retail experience was in the graft stage. And actually, I was speaking to one lady this evening already about the experience of that, which was quite raw and real, really. Was this sort of basement of a hairdresser in Clerkenwell. So if anybody ever went there, thank you for coming. It was very hard to find. It was very dark, and it was under a hairdresser. So that showed real perseverance. But it did give us at least somewhere that we could meet customers, and we actually, you know, we took sort of fairly decent money there. But 2018 was when we opened our store in Chelsea, and it's, if anybody would like to go, it's just on Pont Street, next to all of the lovely Anya Heinmark shops. So it's a lovely store experience. But for me, it was a massively defining moment because, you know, going from the basement of a hairdresser, where we had been for about 5 years actually, to this absolutely stunning, sort of, you know, beautiful building with gorgeous architecture and huge windows, and right in the heart of such a prestigious
It's a big space.
area. It's a big space. Was just, I mean, I, you know, walked in. I remember when we first went to see it, it was shell and core, actually, because they were renovating the whole block. So it was literally just rubble, and it was just a big mess. And the first day we went in, when they were doing the shop fit, and they'd laid the floor and they'd done a couple of other bits of decoration, I mean, we were all in floods of tears, because it was just like, oh my gosh, to see something come to life that felt so smart and so fit for purpose of what we wanted the brand to be. It was just such a moment. It was really, really incredible. And that's been brilliant. It's been a brilliant store. It's survived through the COVID shutdowns and everything. And we made our way through. And then we opened a second store last year at the Royal Exchange. So hopefully very convenient for anyone who's working more in the city. And it was lovely to be able to go back to the city. And again, actually, that was a really long journey as well, because funnily enough, we'd visited that store in 2019. And then we're in negotiations, then COVID hit. So thank goodness we hadn't gone any further. And then for various reasons, some related to us and some related to the site, it took a really long time because they also renovated that block. And then we opened that last spring. And it's, again, it was a really exciting moment, because COVID was very difficult for us. I mean, you can imagine, we were a workwear brand, you know, no one went to work.
Well, we did. This
Like this.
Yeah,
we sold a lot of tops. A lot of tops, but not much else, sadly. So it was very, very, yeah, it was a sort of, how on earth do you get your head around that? I mean, you sort of look back and go, it was actually a bit of a miracle that we did survive. But what was interesting was how quickly it flipped back. So, you know, 2020 was, you know, it was hunker down. We used every single scheme that was, you know, available to survive, basically. But then 2021, it was fascinating. And we were talking a bit about impact on video calls. So January 2021, I remember very clearly the front cover of our catalogue, we put a bright yellow silk blouse. And in traditional retail, they'd be like, nobody will ever sell bright yellow silk. That would be like a terrible decision. And it sold out so fast, because we all just needed some good news and good vibes and some sunshine and some, like, you know, we couldn't travel, we couldn't do anything, couldn't go anywhere. So to see something that was like a pop of color, and, you know, it was dopamine dressing, was really exciting. And so the resurgence that we saw in 21 and then 22 was just phenomenal. And I think everybody was, you know, you'll never go to the office again, you'll never wear heels again, you'll never go out again. And of course that never happened. So it was a bit pivotal, because a lot of brands went very casual. And I do know that the world has gone more casual. You know, we're not sticking our heads in the sand about that. But we also had to make a decision. Our brand stands for something for our customers, which is that if you need a really great suit, outfit, smart, you're presenting in front of a room, you need to be smart. If we walked away from that and went casual like everybody else, then we're not fulfilling our promise anymore. So we sort of had to go with it and go, oh, grit your teeth. Are we going to stay in our space and do what we know and do what our customers love? And I'm really glad we did, because I think it's kept our unique proposition. And, you know, hopefully, even though there are times when it's fine to be casual, I think for a lot of our customers, they're in senior positions, they still need to dress smartly, they need to have that gravitas at work, and we can still be there for them.
Yeah, no, quite. And as you say, it is just actually desk to dinner. And I suppose that's the difference, isn't it? Whereas when it was usually desk, you actually feel like, oh, I need to change because I'm now going out. Whereas actually with what you're doing, isn't it, you can just not waste time in having to do that change.
Absolutely. And, you know, I remember going from desk to dinner and sort of, you know, you'd arrive somewhere, you'd sort of be apologizing, oh, I've just come from work, sorry, I'm sort of, you know, you feel a bit daggy in whatever you were wearing. And that's awful. Like, you want to arrive at work feeling like yourself. I think that was another thing that that hopefully really resonates with our customers, is that it's okay to have a bit of personality in what you're wearing. It doesn't all have to be very bland and boring and beige, you know, and if it is beige, it's got to be fabulous, you know. So it's got to, it's how much time, and I know it's less time now than it used to be, but if you think about your week and how much time you do actually spend at work, then you don't want to be feeling drab in something. You want to be feeling great, because it's so important to feel that way. It really does impact, you know, how we function. So I think bringing that and allowing that, making it more permissible, has been a really fun part of a change that we've seen in workwear. And I think that's gone even further since COVID, actually, in a good way. It's probably more confusing to know what to wear, and it's sort of quite how to get that right. But I think in a way that kind of breaking down those barriers is really empowering for people and exciting.
No, that's right, that's right. And so just you touched on there that of course we all seem to be doing so much screen now, and so you know, getting all together at the same time, same place, doing the same thing is sort of a rare thing. How have you found coping with doing a lot of screen, you know, to raise finance, or to your customers, or to your team? Do you have some top tips as to how you manage your sort of digital life, your digital presentations?
Yeah, do
you always have a fold jacket on, for example?
Almost always. Yeah, I mean, I in the general week, I'm always in the fold, always, and everything. I mean, it's the best perk of the job. So I have obviously got a really lovely wardrobe full of really lovely fold things. And the only time I'm really not is if I'm walking the dog, or, you know, in a soft play or something horrendous like that. But if it's, then it, you know, isn't quite so comfortable. But I think what we've seen, I guess it's interesting in different industries how much time you might spend on a screen. And what we've experienced as a business, I suppose, is that obviously we have a very tangible product. We have a very, you know, a lot of our job is quite physical. We have to physically be with the product, doing things to it, fitting it, trying it, looking at fabric swatches, sketches. And we needed a lot of that to come back very quickly, even in, you know, the dark days of lockdown. So it's that, having that is, I think, a real benefit, because it gives a really legitimate need to bringing the team together. And that's quite powerful, because otherwise it's hard to convince everybody that that's, you know, something we all need to do. But I think the benefit of that, of the creativity, I mean, obviously we've got a very creative team, and the spark that you get off, you know, being with your team, sharing ideas, seeing things, you know, going to places, it's very hard to replicate that digitally. Obviously, a lot of what we do does have to be done online, and there's a huge amount that's much more efficient on doing that. I do think it's interesting, though, based on, for example, the surveys that we do, or the kind of work that we'll do when it is online, how impactful, you know, you can be on screen. And we talked a bit about, you know, is your camera here so that you're looking at, you know, you're actually making eye contact, or by accident is if you put your, you know, your Zoom bit over here, and so you're not actually looking at people in the eye. And I think the same things about that sort of joy and that mindset that we've heard from our customers about why workwear matters absolutely translates to the screen as well. That if you actually have things which are really important, like a, you know, a really important board meeting or something, it would be all too easy to sort of slide in from something else you've been doing and not really treat it with the same way that you would if you'd been showing up in person. But the impact on that, of how the meeting might go, might be more significant than you think. And I sometimes think about it in the context of some of the interesting people that I've met during this job. So we are the official formal wear partner of Manchester City Women's Football Club, if anyone didn't know that. And it's been a really, really fun journey, actually. And it, you know, it's quite innovative, because a lot of the women's clubs didn't have, you know, they need sponsorship if we want, you know, women's sport to grow and things like that. So it's been fun to be a part of that. But also that sense of preparation for a match. And it's interesting thinking about that for a meeting, whether it's online or offline. And we've learned so much from some of the little work we've done, getting to know some of the players and the content we've put together about, you know, the prep that they would do as professional athletes for a game, for a match, is, you know, it's insane. Obviously, finely tuned down to the music that they would listen to, you know, when they're on the bus, or putting their fold suit on when they walk off the bus in a Champions League match, something like that. And it is, you know, it is absolutely, you know, they've eaten at this time, they've drunk at this time, they are ready. It's, you know, it's really that mindset of preparation. And even just thinking about that for something like a board meeting that you might dial into from home, you sort of feel quite embarrassed, actually. It's a bit like, oh my gosh, like, you know, have I got, you know, a bottle of water? Have I, you know, do I feel awake? Have I gone for a walk this morning? Have I had some fresh air? Am I tuned in? Am I still wearing my joggers? Or have I, you know, actually, have I really got up and prepared for this? And I think that's quite interesting to think about, and maybe pay a bit more attention to. And, you know, that's just one example of a field where it's so obvious if somebody was underprepared. But actually, you know, we could apply it in a small way to anything that we do.
That's so interesting, isn't it? Is that you know, be there, isn't it, rather than actually somewhere else, and your mind hasn't yet caught up with actually, and the rituals that they're doing in order for them not to have to think, isn't it? Because I suppose that's part of, you know, the rituals you have is so that you don't have to apply any thought to what you're doing. You don't think about cleaning your teeth. I try not to think about what I'm wearing in the morning. I just open the wardrobe, and that's why I do wear a lot of the fold, because it means I don't have to think about it. And
absolutely.
when you've got, that's the purposes of all those rituals, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you don't. So, and yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the problem with the Zoom, isn't it? It just becomes so transactional, because everyone immediately starts a meeting, and there isn't any, if you have it in person, isn't it? How are you? You know, how was the journey, or how's, you know, the holiday? Or there's none of that. It's just literally transactional. And I was saying to Polly while we were chatting, I've just, you know, finished reading a book about our digital body language and just how important it is in these digital lives we now lead to actually try and bring some of the real. So in your Zoom, you know, at the beginning, just be human for a few moments rather than right into the agenda, isn't it? And then log off and then go on to the next one. Otherwise it becomes a bit inhuman, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And devoid of, you know, the joy of, I mean, part of what you do, isn't it, is you give people confidence, but actually also joy, you know, the joy of actually touching something that's lovely, or you've got pockets where you want them, or
absolutely,
those little moments of joy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very carrot person, so any little treat or any little moment of joy that I can like bring into something, I will be looking for it. So yes, if it's like you're going to have a difficult day, but you're wearing your favorite thing and you feel really good, you can just, if that's just one little moment that made the day easier, take it. You know, why not?
Yeah, the biggest scarf.
Yeah.
I'm ready for war.
Yeah.
So how about, let me ask you these, I'm conscious of time and I want to let the audience speak to you. So a couple of things. So leadership style, I'm getting the sense it's very consensual, it's very, you know, team, you come together, there's, you know, loyal criticism, but tell us a little bit about how you lead your team.
Yeah, I would say that it is definitely, and we have got quite a lot of people who've been in the brand for a long time, which is lovely. I think it's quite a sort of flat structure, and I think one of the things that's exciting in an entrepreneurial business or a relatively young business, it can be very daunting for some people, but it can be just right for others, is that there's sort of opportunity everywhere. So it suits people who want to be proactive, take initiative, and own it, have the responsibility on their shoulders. It's quite exposing in that sense, because there is really nowhere to hide. You know, if there's trade meetings, it could be all different levels of the business. We're all around, you know, everybody's around. It's very, you know, we actually don't have any meeting rooms, but that's mainly budget constraints as opposed to anything else. But it does mean that, you know, any conversation, you have to be very aware of, you know, everything is really out there. So yeah, some people I think really love that, because as the business grows or as different things come up, you can kind of stick your oar in, and there's a lot of opportunity to do that. On the other hand, I think people who maybe don't have the confidence for that, or need a bit more structure and more regular, they want to sort of fit into a very secure pattern, I think would find that very overwhelming. So I suppose we've got a set of values in the business, and one of them is a sort of made up word about being ambitious, which I think is, you know, something that I hope I've sort of reflected in the business, but it's about, you know, we are really ambitious for what we want to do, but we're going to do it in a humble way, in a kind way, and hopefully bring the team on the journey with that, bring our customers on the journey with that. We always have, you know, fold gold standards, things like that, being empowered. Those are all some of our values, but one of them is also about embracing pace and adventure and progress. And that tends to be the one that I think is probably the most descriptive of the environment that we have. It is fast and it's changing all the time. And, you know, somebody might go off on maternity leave, and when they come back, you know, there's all these people, they have no idea who they are. And they used to do this like this, and now it's like this, and there's a new platform for this, and we've opened a new store, and it's a bit of a head spin. And that it really doesn't suit everybody. So we do try to be quite transparent about that, because it can't really slow down, and we don't have the resource for it to slow down, I suppose is the reality. So it can be very invigorating, but it could also be quite intimidating. So.
Yeah, and of course, you know, if you're going to be entrepreneurial, isn't it? As you say, and want to make a difference, to some degree, isn't it? You have to let go a little bit of that whole safety and security.
Yeah,
because you get other opportunities.
yeah.
So then, tell us a little bit about the Fold Awards. So, how did those go? Did you get? I sort of saw the winners on the website. Congratulations to them, but that's quite exciting. And when do we all have to put our entries in for next year?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, we'd done a few years ago, we launched these Fold Women Awards, and I guess the idea was that women would nominate each other for being a Fold woman, and the Fold woman concept was about celebrating women in different industries and different roles and being able to shine a bit of a light on that. And that was brilliant because, you know, like I said when we started, it's sometimes hard to know what careers there are, or, you know, how do you, reading about other people's jobs, I think is always really interesting, and the kind of lives they live. And it makes you feel you're less alone as well if you read about somebody who's also, you know, running around like a headless chicken or whatever it is that they're managing in their day. So this idea had started with that, and then we ran it last year so people could nominate someone, and they'd obviously win a lovely prize, and then also be featured as part of the sort of brand story. And yeah, we had thousands of entries, and people, I think really the thing that I think is so amazing about it is the effort that people will go to support each other. And I think, I don't know, when I started work, there was a very different vibe or narrative that went around sort of senior women at work. And it wasn't something I experienced at all, but there was a sort of, you know, oh, you know, senior women were a certain way, they weren't friendly, they didn't bring other women along with them, it was all very cutthroat. And I'm glad I didn't experience it. And I don't know if that was a more general thing that people did, or maybe because the world was just more like that. But the experience that we have of women going to these lengths to write essays about other women that they admire is incredible. You know, that's in their free time that they don't have to write an essay to support their friend. And, you know, that to me is the thing that I walked away from. It was like, wow, several thousand women took the time to do that about each other. Like, that's something to celebrate.
Great. And do you think in terms of using, you know, machine learning, the data you're getting, data being the new oil, do you see that as one of the things, not for the design, I think, but actually just to help you run your business, these natural, you know, in essence, the ChatGPTs? So do you find that you're using that to help?
I think there's places where it's extremely helpful, and can save a lot of time. But I think it's in the things that are where you're finding you're spending time that isn't value add in a way that you're bringing something unique and characterful to it. And I think you're right on the design. I guess we're very precious about that. And even compared to other commercial brands, I would say we sometimes make not very commercial decisions, and they end up being better. You know, the more sort of commercial we get, the less appealing it is. I think we try and our design team, it's very authentic. You know, our designer really, we aren't copying things that are from the catwalk or from latest trends. She is literally, you know, it's concepts from galleries or a trip to Norway or going to Japan and spending, you know, weeks traveling around. And then those few little sort of glimmers of insight and spark come together, and then she'll create palettes and mood boards, and that's, you know, the inspiration for a collection. And you can tell the difference when that's where it comes from, because there's magic in it, and you can never generate that from a computer. So in that sense, the more we do it, the more protected we are, because I think then a lot of things will end up looking the same, because that will be the nature of how it will work. And if you're prepared to be brave and different and still be very creative, that will be where you end up standing out. So I think there's absolutely a time and a place. And if we don't use it well there, we'll end up we'll fall behind. But on the other aspects, I think we sort of protect.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. So, Kate McMahon, I was thinking as Polly was discussing entrepreneurial boutique, opportunity everywhere, making a difference, and your name was ringing in my ears. You have a question for Polly, I am sure.
I'm so interested in all of what you've said, Polly. Thank you for Jane for this excellent idea, and thank you, Polly, for coming in. Polly, you know how we have this.
Tell Polly who you are first.
Oh,
so
sorry.
Kate McMahon, founder
Far too
of
excited.
what you can introduce yourself.
Yes, well, 13 years ago now, with two very good friends, founded a law firm, specializing in something slightly different, and had incredible, helpful women around us like Jane, who introduced us to people and helped the concept so brilliant. And then a few years ago, we set up another company to encourage women to network. We had a lot of commentary on how you should feel when you're networking. Jane kindly gave up her time to speak about it, but very interested in how we get women comfortable in uncomfortable positions, and what we require around us to feel comfortable in those very challenging things, particularly conflict, promotion, talking about money, all of those things. And so obviously very delighted to hear you talk about confidence in those places. But obviously also, as you have businesses and things happen, some things good, some things bad, and perhaps some bad things that actually turn out to be good. I'm very interested in you saying often people might wear your brand and you think, oh, I could have done without that. But is there a silver lining in that? Because actually you have exposure to a different group. Is it true that with your business, there is no such thing as bad publicity? Does that hold any truth?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the bit that we worry about is what it might signal that we're associated with. So for example, I suppose politics, for example, is probably the most obvious one. And we just have to be, you know, really careful. And if you've got genuine customers and, you know, if you take away what they're saying or what they're standing for, there's an abstract part there, which is you've got a woman who's reached a really senior position in any of those fields in politics or in something related, and she is as genuine a customer as absolutely anybody. And so, you know, I would never want anyone to feel that we weren't proud, in the sense that, like, she needs that support just like anyone does, and we'll take our own judgments about, you know, what they're doing. But so in that sense, that's tricky, because I do feel on a human level that, you know, that's something you have to be a bit careful for. So it's not that something we would distance publicly ever, because I think that would be absolutely wrong as well. But I guess we just have to be very mindful that we're not, you know, seen to be, I suppose, profiting or dressing or aligning ourselves with something that we wouldn't feel comfortable with as a brand. And it might even be something that we do support, we still wouldn't want to, because it's then divisive to somebody else. So I think it's just about people. I suppose that sometimes it upsets me a little bit, because I think we've definitely had commentary online when people have recognized something on someone that they don't like, or they don't approve of, you know, what it is that they're doing. And, you know, like I said, we have no control over that. And then I'm never shopping with you again because this person has worn this or whatever. And that's, you know, I find that difficult because, you know, they're an individual making those choices. And we haven't said that this person is a poster child for the brand. So, you know, that's what happens online. You know, that is the nature of being a bit of a keyboard warrior and so on. So I think you just have to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. But I would say that in those instances, I found it hard to spin it into a positive. But in maybe the positive for me in a way is that still for that individual or those individuals, whoever they might be in whichever country as well, because it's not just the UK, on an individual level, especially those people actually who themselves are probably receiving a lot of really, really horrible things being written about them endlessly, you know, they're still going through that moment of getting dressed in the morning. And then they are facing that. You know, you could argue they're choosing to, fine, but actually, you know, comments get very personal, don't they? So they're not then, you know, nobody is really choosing to get that. So again, I suppose in a way, if I feel like we've contributed to somebody's, you know, making something quite difficult on a personal level, if that's giving them something, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I suppose it's the difference, isn't it, between the PR aspect, where there are some things that we'll absolutely shout from the rooftops about and be so proud of, and sort of you sort of quiet a bit, where, you know, you just let somebody get on with it and you're, you know, just going, that's okay, that's their choice to do it, but we're going to let them get on with it.
Louise, you're at the back, you might need to shout or.
Yes.
Thanks so much for this, and I'm really glad to get to ask you questions. My question is a bit left field. You, I think, just looking at it, have had about 7 investors around that. Law firms, there's a lot of law firms represented here, tend to hate the idea of debt or investment. I'm now in a place where I'm sort of trying to marry the two. You've been in private equity. Anything good, bad or ugly about having investors and having, you know, Nick Evans sit on your board, active investors, other investors, good, bad and ugly about investors in your company?
I think it goes with the territory. If you want to build something and the cash flow of the business or the requirement of the business is that, you know, for whatever reason, you haven't been able to do it in a self-funding way through profits or, you know, through your own savings, you'll have investors in some way, shape or form. So I think it's then about how do you make it work in the best possible way. And I think the other thing to remember is that investors are investors. So you have to be aware of what their real motivation is. And in the end of the day, their job is to be, you know, investing the money and making a return on that money. So with all of those things being very clear, then you can set up your working relationship to be, you know, the absolute best it can be. And I think for us, we've found that having a very sort of transparent, open, sort of constant dialogue is a really good way to do that. We have a very sort of sensible routine of good board meetings, good governance, and as we've grown the shareholder base, you know, there's natural requirements that come from that. I would say that though on another level, it's really, you know, it's full on, and it does change. It does sort of change everything, because the minute that you do that, the minute I got my first angel investors, it's all very well saying that when you start a business, you're your own boss and, you know, the freedom and this and that, absolute rubbish. You know, you're just not at all. In fact, the stakeholders and the responsibility you have is far more. And you are completely and utterly wedded to it. You know, I mean, it's not my actual name. It's not called Polly McMaster, thank goodness. But, you know, you can think of plenty of retail examples or other examples where people, that's exactly what it is. And then they end up not really even having their own name at some point, you know, in the future. So I think it's just, you know, being really aware that it's a thing that's going to happen if it's what you're going to need to build the business. and learn to be very resilient about it, and you know, to try and not take it, there's no point saying don't take it personally, it's your business, you know, the sacrifices you've made, everything you've done for it, it is deeply personal, and there is no way around that really. So
Polly, you
Yeah.
must let them.
yeah, yes, exactly, exactly.
No, but I suppose it's actually also a good discipline, isn't it? Because it means that you measure what matters and you decide what matters, and then you prioritize what matters, isn't it? Whereas otherwise you could be running around like the headless chicken you mentioned earlier, isn't it? Whereas that actually is quite a good discipline.
Yeah.
I think we may have just like one more question, or maybe two if they're brief, if anyone would like to ask a question. Nilo, yes, two. So Nilo and then, oh, three. You might, let's,
Thank you for sharing.
Oh, we
we'll
go
come,
there.
we'll come, please go here and then we'll come to Nilo and then we'll come behind. It was near Lucy. Okay, was it Akima to ask a question?
Hi, Polly.
Yes.
Thank you. It was great. I'm new to the brand. I just wondered how you came up with the name.
I will give my sister the credit for the name, as we were brainstorming, as you do with, you know, over a napkin in a pub or something, wherever we were all those years ago. But really the concept was really nice. She's very creative and a sort of a writer, so she was the perfect person to ask and brainstorm about it with. But the idea and what really resonated with me was that it has two meanings. So a lot of our product has the sort of tangible and tactile folds in it. We do a lot of draping on the stand, which is how you get really nice, flattering, organic forms in your clothes. So there's a really lovely element to that in the fold, and it's become very much part of our design DNA. But the other part of it was about, you know, come into the fold, and our actual, you know, name is Welcome to the Fold Limited, you know, trading as the Fold, but just to make a bit of a joke about it, but it was, you know, really about that, because that premise of this needs to be a brand that is a community and is a place that women who are working so hard and are our customers feel that we are resonating with them, and that there's somewhere they can go which understands them. And so come into the fold, come into our community.
Lovely. Nilo.
Hi, Polly. Thank you for sharing your journey with us today. I can relate because I was an entrepreneur and have a startup based in East Africa. We are so far from fashion. We deal with agriculture and data, but the fold has definitely boosted my confidence when I've been going to meetings and pitching all of that. I just wanted to know, on a personal level, are there any particular challenges or triumphs that stick with you today? How you overcame that biggest challenge in your journey?
A lot, yeah. I think actually, and it's relevant to the investor question as well, I think one of the biggest challenges was probably a couple of times raising money got very, very, very difficult, and it was incredibly stressful. So you're far enough into the journey that you've got employees, you've got stakeholders, you've got suppliers, you've got a lot of bills to pay. The team is very small, very, very skinny, and you're really just trying to survive, and you know you need to raise money, and it's coming at you like a wall because you've got to pay everybody, and it's terrifying. And if the sales are sort of dripping in, and then you know pretending that there's Colin from accounts, if anybody's watched this, Colin from accounts, you know, fictitious person who, you know, is going to help follow the payment run next week. So all of that you sort of end up living through was stressful on a level that I never anticipated. And that was, you know, it really affected me for sure at various points along the journey. And then, you know, if you know it's going to be okay, you wouldn't stress about it so much. But the truth is you don't know, and you'll never know until one day it isn't or it wasn't. So there is no relief to be found in that. So I think that very, very real fear was something that I hadn't necessarily expected to live through. Maybe it was good that I never thought that. I don't think you could ever really preempt it or know what that's going to feel like. So that was, that was quite hard. You know, I think people is relevant in a room full of women that, you know, having kids while you're growing a business is extremely challenging. You know, I'd had a couple of miscarriages, then I was trying to raise money, then I was running out of money, then I was pregnant, but then I had to tell the investors that I was pregnant through the first fundraise that we were doing. And, you know, obviously most of the stories I've heard is that the investors walk away at that point. That is the normal, or that was the normal outcome. Unfortunately, they didn't walk away, but I had to present a maternity plan, which was like literally T plus 2 weeks. You know, we'll have this call or that call or whatever. And that was, you know, that was really hard. And actually more recently, I've really had to go back and kind of deal with that a bit, because that was very, very difficult to cope with. And I have had 2 kids while I've, you know, been building the business, and it's, you know, that's been very, very challenging. There is no maternity leave because there's no maternity cover. So it's, you know, all of those things, they're just, you know, they're hard, they're sacrifices. And then you get those great moments, like while I was raising money and pregnant and, you know, trying to get it to the end. And then Kate Middleton wore the fold. I was like, oh my God, thank you, you know. And it was, you know, it was absolutely all the Christmases at once. It was everything that anybody said it was going to be, and it was incredible. And, you know, we blew up overnight, and international sales, and sold out of everything, and it was wonderful. And, you know, it was a long time ago now, so, you know, but it was super impactful. And just that, you know, those highs and lows really kind of, yeah, are kind of a big part of the journey. But we're still, you know, with all of those tough bits, you're still here, but it is definitely resilience to the max. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Boy. I didn't see you. Was that Kima? I thought it was you. Kima.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to just turn it on, I think.
I just wanted to pay a compliment, first of all. I remember when I was a trainee, there was so little choice in terms of colour, particularly for people of colour and for Black
women. And I really, really like that I can open the pages of the Fold when I receive it and on the website and see so much color, and not, you know, just pale colors, but really bright, vibrant colors that look really great on Black skin. I think you've definitely cornered the market here. I'm not selling it well. I'm wearing navy, but I have a lot of colors from your collection. And I also think it's a very, you haven't said much about it, but it's such an inclusive brand in terms of, you know, people like me have had 2 kids, haven't quite lost the baby weight, that little peplum. It does a lot of wonders. So thank you for understanding. Thank you for, you know, your attention to detail there. It's really, really good. But I just wondered, you know, I've listened with joy at what you've said, and I just wondered what's next. You said, you know, you seem to be bucking the trend, you know, not going into loungewear, which was, you know, probably what everybody thought you would do, going into brick and mortar, Royal Exchange, doing lots of color for business. What's next? What's the trajectory? Because you're clearly at the top. What should we expect for the Fold women?
Oh, well, thank you for your kind words as well. That's really, really, really nice to hear. Lots of things, hopefully. So a few things I'd call out. One, which you'll spot when you see the rail, is that we've started to push into some product that isn't just pure workwear. And that's happened quite organically, because a lot of our customers, and I think this will probably resonate, that when you become quite senior, I guess, as your career is growing, and maybe even, you know, all the way up, your work life and other aspects of your life do start to sort of blend together a bit. And if you're going to an event, and it could be a lovely personal event like a wedding, or a big family celebration or something like that, or it could be something with a, you know, a charity dinner, you're on still, because you're still the person that is the accomplished person that the people in your network know. And what we found was that a lot of women started buying some of our product to wear to those things, because for the same reasons they were buying it for work, they were feeling great in it, they really like the femininity, the color, all of those lovely things. So we've pushed into that a bit more, and, you know, there's definitely things that are, you know, that would, the chartreuse dress would be a bold choice for like a Tuesday meeting. But you could definitely wear that to, you know, we have, in a wonderful way, you know, women going to collect their, you know, to their investitures or something like that, like, is really wonderful if they're, you know, celebrating that moment in the Fold. So I think that's something that hopefully you'll see more of, and we've found real success with that. And I think the recipe is exciting for us because it's still the beautiful fabrics that we work with. A lot of them are really bespoke fabrics that are made in Italy. We work with the artisans and the craftsmen there, and we want to preserve that. It's, you know, hopefully, you know, we don't want any of that to die out. So it's really lovely to be able to support it and also bring it in a way that isn't thousands of pounds, because literally our clothes are expensive. They really are, and I understand that. But to get the same quality, you would have to spend a lot more in a designer brand. So, you know, at least we are able to do it at the best price that we can. So that's one thing, is the occasion wear. Hopefully more stores in the future. I think we want them to always feel special and purposeful. So I don't think we're a kind of roll out on every high street kind of a brand, but I think we are where we really believe that there's a need for our customer there, we would love to, you know, have one, and hopefully outside the UK. We are actually, the UK is only 35% of our sales. So half our business is in the US, which at the moment you can imagine is causing quite some headaches as we navigate Trump's tariffs literally every second of every day at the moment. Very challenging, but we'll see how we get on with that.
And
And
where's the rest then? So if it's 50, 35, and then where's
the rest
Europe?
is everywhere else, actually. So a real smattering sort of globally, which is really exciting. So I think, you know, diversification is a good thing, both in our supply chain as well as,
That's
you know,
really
with our
hard with the
customers.
sizing though, is it? So you just, because that's the thing, isn't it? With the reason why I wear it is because it fits me. But it isn't it? If you then go to someone else's 10, 12, 14, whatever you are, isn't it? But it doesn't fit you.
Yeah, although I suppose what we've seen is that, we haven't seen a particular challenge with different returns. I think if what you're asking is around, like, for example, do people return more because they don't have the experience with the brand because they're shopping from further away? We don't see a particular difference in that, actually. But also, I suppose I would love to believe that that's partly because we do a lot of human fits on our product, which actually a lot of brands don't do anymore. And they're lined as well and made of good quality fabric. So the fit should be better because of that. So hopefully people are finding that, you know, that the fit does work. And we do go from a 4 to a 20 in sizing. So we haven't really had to change that much in order to sell that abroad, actually, which has been brilliant. And we haven't seen a particular difference in any of those territories. So that's been good.
That's
So
amazing.
international stores, occasion, new categories. Let's see.
Well done.
Lots of different things.
Look, humble and ambitious. I love the idea. And Polly, welcome to the fold. So we welcome you to this. Thank you for coming and giving up your time, and thank you for creating the fold. So, Polly McMaster.